In this video, we would like to take a look at some external conditions that affect the paper properties. Since real wrapping and warehouse conditions have an important influence on the processing and strength properties of the paper, there are some guidelines for storing the paper reels which have to be observed. The paper reels should be stored in a closed but well-ventilated warehouse, at least under a roof, not in the rain or directly in the hot sun, and not near heat sources. The reels are wrapped with packaging paper with moisture protection. Therefore, the wrapping should only be removed immediately before processing. Residual reels, which need to be stored unwrapped for a longer period of time, will either absorb the humidity of the air or dry out at low humidity. Both could impair the processing of the paper. Therefore, we recommend repacking the residual reels with the removed transport packaging. The influence of humidity is, of course, also evident during the converting process when the machine restarts after a longer standstill with the unpacked reel in the winder, but that will affect only the outer layers of the reel. When your paper reel is stored properly, take a close look at the label on the outside of the paper reel. It contains all the useful information. On the left side are the reel ID and the order number. In the line below it, you can find the width, weight, running meter, diameter of the reel, and the grammage of the paper. The unit identifier includes the reel ID and the mill code and can be found 3 times on the label, twice at the top right and once as a large barcode at the bottom of the label. Paper mills use different letters to mark the position of the reel on the paper machine. Middle reels are always marked with an M, while to identify edge reels, the letters S for side, L or R for left and right, and F for front and D for drive side are used. In case of a request or information to the supplier regarding one or more reels, the following data are required for a unique identification of the reel: either the roll ID or the order number plus the roll number. This data ensures traceability to the production and quality data of the reels. The usual moisture content of sack kraft paper is around 7%. After removing the protective packaging paper, the ambient air will not have a significant impact on that if the paper is processed without delay. But the gluing of the sack will, especially starch glue, as it is water-based. Therefore, when using starch, the sacks must have sufficient time to dry after production, as a high moisture content in the valve area leads to a higher breakage rate when the sacks are filled. Since the strength of the paper decreases with increasing moisture content, it is quite important to know the permissible moisture content of your sack. There are 2 different ways to measure the moisture content of the paper. Let's start with the oven drying method. This involves cutting off the valve side of the sack and drying it in the oven at 105 degrees Celsius for 4 hours. By weighing this offcut before and after drying, the moisture content can be calculated from the difference in weight. In the second method, we measure the relative moisture of the paper in the valve area instead of the absolute moisture. Here, we place the sword of the hygrometer in the sack's valve. The measurement should be taken in the middle of the pallet, where the paper sacks do not come into contact with the air and therefore dry more slowly. Many years of experience with this method have shown that the relative humidity should not be higher than 75%. Let's move on to the actual drying process. This graph shows the measured relative moisture of the sacks from 2 pallets. Pallet number 1 was compressed immediately after the sacks were produced and tied in the pressed state. The second pallet was left unpressed for a few days. It took 7 days longer for the pressed pallet to reach the target value of 75%. Mondi recommends drying the pallets with the manufactured sacks for at least 2 days before pressing them. And watch out! After wrapping the pallet with a stretch film or shrink hood, no further drying takes place. The moisture is only distributed within the pallet. This is why the storage method of a pallet with empty paper sacks is so important. However, there is no universal answer to the question of how many days a pallet should be stored to properly dry before filling. Therefore, we can only give recommendations for good storage conditions, not exact times. The sacks should be stored in a closed but well-ventilated room. You should avoid rain or heat sources near the pallet. The relative humidity should be between 50 and 70%. If it falls below 50%, it will help to wet the floor or place some buckets with wet towels in the storage area. It should be noted, however, that the packaging as well as the storage conditions of the paper reels also have a great influence on the mechanical strength of the paper and thus on your process. For further information, please get in touch with us or visit our Mondi Go to Sack app.